In the first part, we discussed what would happen if Touya Todoroki became a hero, thanks to his body never rejecting his quirk like it did in the main series, thus never creating the villain Dabi. So click the card in the top right to check that out if you haven't seen it yet. At the end of the last part, we saw Toya, also known as the hero Endanger, partnering up with Endeavor to investigate a mysterious location, which after finding a secret basement, the two find a strange figure that questions them, saying which one of you is the strongest, as from its neck, a massive muscle warps out towards Toya as the two heroes engage their flames, and Toya gets sent flying towards the end of the basement, as Endeavor lands a flashfire fist-fueled jet burn on the high-end Nomu. But the high-end Nomu keeps Toya in his grasp. The Nomu stands up and regenerates from Endeavor's attack, laughing and saying it's too weak, and as Endeavor shouts out the information about the Nomu's healing capabilities, as well as its ability to speak, setting it apart from anything else they've ever seen, Endanger releases flames from all over his body, melting the massive muscle that protruded out towards him and held him against the basement wall, as the Nomu screams in pain from the heat of Toya's blue flames. Now this fight against Hood was intense from the very beginning, with Endeavor and Toya being caught off guard, stumbling upon this thing, but it isn't an unmanageable situation. Endeavor worries about the location of the battle, saying a cramped place like this isn't really where he's most efficient, but the basement itself is fairly expansive beyond the small room that they initially found. It seems like it spills out into a large chamber of natural rock, with drips of water falling from above below into the dark cavern, now being lit by flames by the two heroes as they fight this monster. They didn't know what this thing was exactly, but they knew that they had to bring their best if they were gonna take it down. After watching it regenerate, Toya tells Endeavor that this choice of location is actually favorable to them in two ways. First off, since there's no one else around, they're allowed to fight the creature without worrying about the potential damage that it could do to anyone else. The Nomu lunges towards Toya with its wings on its back, and Toya and Endeavor both try to hit it with Blast of Fire, but it creepily attaches itself to the wall and various stalagmites that are coming out of the ground, crawling along any surface it can like a giant strange cockroach trying to crush them. As it slips behind several stalagmites, it shoots out normal Nomu from its back that join the fight and begin attacking Endeavor, and that's when Endanger shouts out the second reason that this place is so advantageous for them, which is because with a completely closed off area, they can create an oven for the high-end Nomu, sending it straight into the fires of hell. As the high-end lunges towards Toya at an odd angle, with its teeth completely out and ready to bite down on him as its muscles try to latch onto him, Toya claps his hands together and begins to do a little shuffle, saying, "Man, this gets me excited, finally someone that I don't have to hold back on." And as Toya moves, little embers float in the air around him. He claps, and the embers start to fall onto his hands, specifically onto his fingers, as they engulf his fingers in flames in the shape of sharp, fiery talons. And as a Nomu finally reaches Toya, he swings both of his hands and unleashes one of his signature moves, Flash Fire Fist, Three-Legged Crow. And from Toya's hands, three four-fingered talons from different directions converge as sharp beams of fire that begin tearing apart the beast, as the talons also seem to grab him and hold him against a pillar for a moment. On Endeavor's side, we see him unleashing a powerful prominence burn at the extra Nomu that are swarming him, taking the group out in one fell swoop. Now the head of the high-end Nomu detaches itself and begins to regrow to break free from Toya's technique, and to their surprise, it was able to quickly recover, but both Toya and Endeavor notice that it took longer to heal from Toya's attack than it did from Endeavor's attack. So they begin to work together on an active strategy where they try to overwhelm it so that Toya can finish it off. Roaring flames spilled from the two heroes as they rush the Nomu down together. Toya uses his high speed and painful flames to keep the Nomu largely at bay, as Endeavor begins to prepare for his secret final move on Toya's command. As Toya fights the Nomu though, his body slowly gets wrapped in flames more and more, as embers begin to flicker in the air all through the basement. As the Nomu thinks that it's cornered Toya, he says now, and looks at the high end and says, "Too bad you came up against us," and sticks his tongue out, but it's not actually his tongue, but one completely made out of flames. Toya bites down on the fake tongue, and one of the embers that the high end is flying towards expands like a floating mine of fire in the air, knocking the high end into another ember, and then another, causing a maddening scene of the creature ricocheting between expanding embers fibers that all stick to its body as it travels through the lit basement in a bright blue tone. The Nomu lets out a deafening roar as it realizes its only hope is to escape the basement, and as it runs right past Endeavor, he screams that he still needs a moment, but Toya laughs and says that's why he sent the embers up through the ventilation system in the building, and we then hear the high-end ricocheting upstairs in torment as Toya matches Endeavor's exact stance and they unleash a new combination attack, and this attack is called Double Burn, which intensifies the heat of both of their flames in unison as they both slam their hands down into the ground, and for a moment everything goes quiet, but suddenly pillars of flame start to breach the ground out of the basement, some orange, some blue, some a fusion of the two, as magma and rock starts to catapult itself out of the floor of the building and the surrounding area in what could be mistaken for a genuine volcanic eruption that blows the entire house away along with the Nomu inside, completely cooking it down to the last cell as the molten remains of the building collapses around them. Breathing heavily, Endeavor and Endanger have done it. They won. And it's then that Endeavor collapses onto the ground completely gassed out, and Toya actually notices that his father has a pretty sick burn up the side of his face, and he questions how Endeavor of all people got such a nasty burn. But it's there where Endeavor theorizes that Toya's flames might have reached the point where they even make Endeavor's flame resistance pretty much the same as a regular person dealing with usual flames. And in the moment, Toya jokes about how he surpassed his old man, but what isn't being said is how the two are considering how dangerous this realization is. After all, Toya is only getting stronger, and it might be time for them to start working separately after all. But now, they're tied up in this mess. Endanger and Endeavor head to the hospital to deal with their injuries and are soon released, with Toya leaving first the same day and Endeavor needing to stay for another day or two to have his burn cared for. Still not sure how the dots connect between the weird creature that they fought and the strange man in dark robes, they think about who they should take this information to, but it's soon after that Endeavor and Endanger are notified about an attack at a forest training camp that took place with UA High students, where a mysterious group of villains and a similar strange creature attacked the students and were ultimately defeated by the class. However, the ringleader and several of his associates managed to get away. This follows up another report that there was a similar attack previously at UA's USJ Center, where another one of these Nomus is deployed, and the actual ringleader of the entire operation, Shigaraki Tamura, came up against these same UA High students, but ultimately All Might arrived there and saved everyone, although he did let the villains get away. So for Toya and Endeavor, it seems like a lot of the dots are connecting between this weird villain group, these strange new creatures, maybe the man in robes, and specifically UA High. So Endeavor and Toya investigate, heading to UA and meeting several UA students before meeting All Might and Aizawa to get information on Shigaraki and Kurogiri. And then they take the information to the Hero Public Safety Commission, who assigns them a hero from their office to aid in their investigation. And that hero is actually the new pro hero, Hawks. Hawks and Toya do not get along, since they're both the quick and flashy type, so they constantly try to steal each other's thunder. As two rather young heroes who've both placed pretty high at each other's respective hero billboard chart debuts, it's obvious that the two are on similar paths. But Hawks has quickly ascended to the position of number 3 hero, which Toya questions since he feels like he's just being limited to the number 12 spot for some reason, despite being much more capable than heroes like Hawks. But Hawks says that part of it is a popularity contest, and despite the fact that Toya is pretty popular, he hasn't won over the hearts of those civilians who've learned to depend on heroes like Endeavor and All Might over multiple generations now, so they can't put all their faith in his son yet just because he wants them to. And maybe because he's Endeavor's son, he has to prove himself even more than someone like Hawks, who doesn't have any previous attachments to the Hero Society. Toya gets annoyed at the thought that he hasn't proved himself enough, saying he's never even heard of any of the jobs that Hawks has worked on to get him such a high position. But Hawks says the fact that Toya didn't hear about them is exactly why his position is so high. Eventually, Endeavor gets called away for a secret operation, and Toya is sent to a separate location along with Hawks to go back up the heroes that are there. Hawks bonds with Toya and explains how Endeavor saved him in the past, and Toya thinks that he wants to be a hero to someone like his father is to Hawks, so one day they can fight fight side by side like Hawks and Endeavor are nowadays, because that just sounds like an inspirational story. Maybe something like that would win over the public if just taking down villains isn't enough. As Hawks and Toya arrive to their location, we see Mount Lady, Best Jeanist, and several other heroes preparing to enter a warehouse where it's alleged that the villains may be storing their Nomu and a hero that was taken into their custody. Elsewhere, Endeavor accompanies All Might on a raid to the villain's bar, but all they find there are a group of Nomu. In the warehouse, we see Kamui Woods and Edgeshot sneaking inside alongside Best Jeanist, and all they see is a figure standing in the darkness. Toya, who's outside of the warehouse, hears a loud explosion along with the entire half of the warehouse and its surrounding area, which are destroyed. All for One floats in front of the heroes and says this is his checkmate. Muscular falls out of the sky on top of Best Jeanist, crushing the hero with all of his strength. And on his back, holding onto muscle fibers, we see Mr. Compress, who throws several marbles into the crowd of heroes that pop open to reveal several members of that mysterious league of villains. And it's here where they begin to attack the heroes with their quirks. Himiko Toga completely drains Native, a nearby hero, as she attacks Kamui Woods but isn't able to break through his bark-like skin. Muscular swells up and becomes a hulking mass of muscle and begins fighting Mount Lady, overwhelming her with his strength and throwing her 2 blocks away. Jumping from wall to wall, we see Spinner with a poison dagger catching heroes left and right, as a second Muscular leaps out of the crowd and knocks Hawks into a nearby building. But then this Muscular chooses to approach Toya, and he gets absolutely melted by another one of Toya's moves that he calls Flash Fire Fist White Snake. And as he folds his hands and arms together in front of him, a flaming hot white and blue snake snatches Muscular up, but Toya realizes that he was just a clone as Muscular melts in the mouth of the flaming serpent. In the crowd of chaos, we see a figure slowly walking towards Toya, saying, You're different. You handled him pretty quickly. What about me, hero? As Toya is about to react to what the man says, the man lunges at Toya and reaches for him, only touching part of Toya's costume, and it instantly begins to turn to powder as Toya rips it off, realizing that this is the man that he and Endeavor were told to go after. This is Shigaraki. Shigaraki tells Toya that the next attack won't miss, and he only wants to fight the sub-boss, not the NPCs, as he lunges at Toya again, but Toya smirks and says, Are you so excited because you were able to destroy my jacket? Here's some news. I can do that too. As fire begins to glow beneath Toya's feet, and he begins to float above Shigaraki with fire in his hands now as well. Toya puts both hands back to back from each other in the shape of 2 cones, like he's holding a telescope. And as he takes a deep breath, he thinks to himself, Flash Fire Fist, Ryu. As he blows hard through his hands, and from within the tunnel created by his palms, a long flaming serpent-like dragon forms and flies toward Shigaraki, grabbing him with its mouth and sending him flying into the air as Toya controls the flames with his quirk, explaining that of course Ryu isn't sentient or anything, this is just what a master of flames is capable of. But in that moment, something unexpected happens. A flash through the air, and Shigaraki is nowhere to be seen. Toya looks around and finally spots him again in the arms of a man wearing a strange mask who is now also floating in the air. Toya blows another Ryu dragon from his hands at the figure, who activates a flame shield quirk to completely block it, and then he absorbs the dragon and shoots it back at Toya with a new twisted design and purple flames. And this time the dragon seems to come to life as it continues to attack Toya, who realizes there's only one person who can combine the effects of multiple quirks like this, and that's the man that he's heard of in the past, the one that All Might was supposed to have taken out already, All for One. Seeing that heroes behind him are losing to the League of Villains, with All for One in front of him holding an incapacitated Shigaraki, Toya decides now is the time to stand out. Now is time to put himself in that same class as Endeavor and All Might. But at that moment, Hawks comes flying in to try to cut the man floating in front of Toya with his feathers. But this is where things begin to fall apart. As Hawks reaches All for One, he's actually caught off guard as All for One says, "And what are you planning on doing with that, Keigo Takami?" And using that moment of hesitation from Hawks, All for One reaches out and quickly grabs Hawks by the head and steals his quirk. Find out what happens in part 3 by getting this video to 1,500 likes.